Fire broke out at the Bridgetown wastewater treatment plant in Lakes Folly, the city, this afternoon. The blaze prompted an evacuation of the immediate area. However, quick work by firefighters averted a potential chemical fire. Dale Ford has more.
When a CBC team arrived, the plant was covered in dark, billowing smoke. Police officers had cordoned off the area while fire officers outfitted with masks and oxygen tanks sought to bring the blaze under control. Chief Fire Officer Wilfred Marshall said his officers were concerned about the presence of chlorine in the building and a decision had been made to evacuate the area as a precaution. Members of the Defense Force equipped with respirators went door to door, assisting residents in leaving the area. But Mr. Marshall said there were some residents who refused to leave. MP for the area, Colonel Jeffrey Bostic, who arrived on the scene from debate in the lower house, said he had no immediate reports of residents being severely affected by the fire. Just before 4 o'clock, the fire was under control and the all clear given. Mr. Marshall said the fire had been contained in a room on the upper level which stored chlorine, but that chemical had not been exposed. Residents returned home and operations at the plant are expected to resume to normal. Dale Ford for CBC News.
Minister of Finance Chris Sinclair says government has moved in the right direction by investing in the development of an alternative energy sector. He made this point during debate in the House of Assembly on the Electric Light and Power Bill 2013.
That we have in fact begun the process of developing the evolution of a genuine new economic sector in Barbados that will not perhaps earn us large quantities of foreign exchange, but will save us substantial amounts of foreign exchange in relation to the expenditure of our reserves for fossil fuels.
Mr. Sinclair says despite criticism, the Electric Light and Power Bill is a groundbreaking and historic piece of legislation that will have a transformative effect on all Barbadians.
And it brings new players into the market. It allows for new and growing investment to occur to help expand the country's services and, of course, eventually its gross domestic product. And we can only say to the public of Barbados that, that we thank them for their patience in relation to us taking as long as we have. But you know what they say, how long is too long if it is a good thing.
St. John MP Mara Thompson says government's current plan to strengthen the local renewable energy sector is critical and an example of an oversight by the former Barbados Labour Party administration. She said the BLP failed to move the legislation forward for more than 15 years. The Deputy Speaker of the House says she's paying close attention to the Barbados Light and Power's recent grant for a rate adjustment and its plans to retire its generation plant after 35 years.
I cannot see in the near future, with all that we know now and experience, that any introduction of a new plant at the Barbados Light and Power which uses fossil fuels can be a least cost option to consumers. Just like consumers at home, the Barbados Light and Power cannot determine what the price of oil is. And therefore, I cannot see any efficiency, at least for consumers, maybe for them in terms of the money they spend, but certainly not the price of the fuel. This reality underscores the very critical importance of the approach of the Democratic Labour Party to a future Barbados. This proclamation by the representative of the company should be carefully studied, and we must appreciate the timing of what is taking place.
Leader of the opposition, Mia Motley, says government has added to the suffering of Barbadians by resorting to laying off 3,000 public sector workers next year. She believes their suffering can be eased with the reduction in the price of electricity. According to her, it must come soon as Barbados cannot wait for 2 or 5 years more for a reduction.
To reduce the price at which Barbados National Oil Company sells fuel oil that is derived from Barbados ground to Barbados Light and Power. Mr. Speaker, the reality is this, that it can reduce the price of the fuel clause by a minimum of 12 cents, possibly 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So that the average price that we are paying now of 41 cents, 42 cents per kilowatt hour can come down to 29, 30 cents a kilowatt hour.
Meanwhile, City MP Colonel Jeffrey Bostic says he supports the proposed legislation and lamented that Barbados and the region have fallen behind in their initial innovations in renewable energy. He spoke specifically of hydro energy in Dominica and solar power in Barbados.
So this is something that we've been doing for a long time, to the extent that we have over 45,000 dwellings in this country, between commercial and residential, using photovoltaic solar water heating technology. And this is significant, Mr. Speaker. This is significant. This is an area where we ought to move with speed and alacrity in order to propel the development of this country.
Prime Minister Fundell Stewart has made clear he did not betray the trust of people when government made the tough decision to send home 3,000 workers early next year. His comments came yesterday as he spoke publicly on the issue for the first time since the decision was announced on Friday on the floor of Parliament by Finance Minister Chris Sinclair. Prime Minister Stewart says his administration held out as long as possible and it was an absolute last resort.
Let it not be forgotten that the exercise of this option is coming just shy of 6 years after these problems manifested across the world. And we tried to hold the hand of the workers for as long as we could. That is why I could confidently say on political platforms during the last election that the exercise of this option would be a very, very last resort.
As public sector workers brace for layoffs early in the new year, local training institutions are getting their shops in order to help retrain Barbadians for a new world of work. The top official at the Technical, Vocational and Educational Training Council tells CBC News that TVET is already in discussions with several of them to ensure they're ready to meet demand. Executive Director Henderson Eastman also gave details of a $10 million competency-based training fund, part of the Skills for the Future Fund backed by the Inter-American Development Bank. He says the aim is to bridge the gap between institutions offering training and the private sector and give more people an opportunity to gain employment.
So to create a demand, we want the employers to say what type of employee, define what they want, and the training institution respond. So in order to do that, there is funding for training for the employers, but it must be led by the employers and they must twin with the training institution. So we hope to draw industry closer to training or draw closer training to industry. That is how we are going to do it.
Mr. Eastman says Barbados now needs to build a more skilled-based labor force to help grow the economy in sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture. He referred to a recent study on the professional services sector in Barbados done by the Barbados Coalition of Service Industries to support his case.
The country is going to need more technical people as we try to resuscitate manufacturing and agriculture and take advantage of some of these areas. Now, the study by the BCSI looked at some of the industries for high growth industries across the world: biotechnology, renewable energy, private education, and the technology itself. These are some of the areas, these are the top 4 services industries that experience growth globally.
President of the Barbados Road Safety Association, Charmaine Rowland Bowen, is appealing to local law enforcement to clamp down on motorists on the roads without driver's license or motor insurance. Ms. Rowland Bowen notes that the number of motorists guilty of committing this offence appears to be on the increase, and this, she says, concerns her association immensely. She made the comment during a memorial church vigil at the Black Best New Testament Church in St. Peter in remembrance of the lives of 3 young people who were killed tragically in a vehicular accident last year. Ms. Rowland Bowen says when unlicensed and uninsured people become involved in accidents, it is often to the disadvantage of legitimate motorists. She says she was unfortunately a victim of this circumstance.
That is another situation where we would like the authorities to stamp down on persons driving on the road without motor vehicle insurance, without license, and without valid registration. Because he did not have any a valid driver's license, I would not have been compensated, for my injuries. And I feel in a situation like that, that is very hard. Because not only me, it happens to a number of persons, in other situations, and something really needs to be done about that.
Ms. Rowland Bowen says the charge of driving without due care and attention needs to be taken more seriously.
We have many laws out there, that can, even distracted driving. We don't need a cell phone law for persons to be reported or to be arrested on the road. There are laws that stands for driving without due care and attention. I mean, if you're driving your vehicle and you get into an accident whilst using your cell phone, you're not driving with due care and attention. We need to look at our speeding laws. Too many accidents on our roads are caused by dangerous speeds, Speeding not only entails driving too fast, above the speed limit, it also entails driving too fast with the conditions. And as responsible drivers and road users, including pedestrians, we must look out for these things, and we must make sure that when we're out there on the roads, that we're doing the right thing.
For the holidays, parents should try their best to buy educational toys for their children. This advice from retired principal and former BUT president Carl Springer as he outlined the role of a good parent.
A parent must be aware of what is happening in the classroom, in the school environment with his child or her child. They must give the child support, also give the teachers support in what they're doing. See that everything meshes for the good of that child. And if you do that, you will see even a slower learner. Because everybody can't be bright. And each child has something in him, despite being slow, that will make him into a man.
Mr. Springer also says teachers should find time to plan for the classroom.
A good teacher understands. He plans his work properly. He executes it where it ought to be. He looks at his pupils, his class, and you will see that there are some pupils in that class that need extra attention.
Former principal of the Ann Hill School, Daphne Brown, has been described as always willing to help students. Speaking during a retirement function at the school for Ms. Brown, Education Officer Kay Sargent said Ms. Brown was a very industrious teacher.
I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that in leafing through that old dusty file, I noted from all of the reports written by various principals over the years, there's a constant thread being repeated about Miss Brown. Words and phrases like cares about her students, assist with the Brownies, always willing to assist, shows a genuine interest in her pupils, is caring. Now, those are some powerful personal characteristics.
After receiving a gift, Ms. Brown recounted her teaching experiences. She said that one of the primary lessons she learned is to treat others with respect.
And I always said, after my St. Joseph experience, if I ever get a chance to become a head teacher or whatever, my first thing will be to embrace the human aspect of it. And it was from Ms. Goodridge and later Ms. Irish Riley that I learned you must treat people well, you must treat people with respect, and then after that, all other things will fall into place.
Art enthusiasts had the opportunity to view the work of local artist Cassius Clay. His collection was displayed at the main guard of the Garrison Savannah. He says he had a good turnout for the first-time exhibition and will plan differently next year.
Well, I did send out a lot of invitations, and I didn't get half of those people at all. But the ones that I got, along with people that they brought, I had a fantastic crowd for the first time. I had a really good crowd, and the show here was good and everything. We had the band Eggs playing. People get to see two sides of me, my singing and my art. And then it was fantastic.